Welcome to Transcending the Rabbit Hole. I'm Brandy Anderson. I'm a spiritual director and Jungian coach on an ever-winding contemplative path of becoming. I'm the author of Through the Veil, A Glimpse into the Afterlife, and co-host of Spectral Symposium podcast. I'm joined today by my very good friends and co-hosts, Annelise and Parker Bess. Annelise is a singer, songwriter, sound healer, and spiritual influencer dedicated to raising human consciousness as she shares her awakening journey on TikTok. Parker is a true knowledge seeker and truth bringer in the realm of esoteric wisdom. Parker has a solid understanding of metaphysical concepts with expertise in the shadowy corridors of secret societies, occult knowledge, and ancient aliens and ufology. We invite you to pry open your third eye and journey with us through the cosmic rabbit hole as we alchemize esoteric insights in a quest for ultimate truth.
Falling down the rabbit hole again.
Greetings and welcome to the very first episode of Transcending the Rabbit Hole. Today we're introducing ourselves. We just want to give our listeners an idea of who we are and where we are coming from. All of life conspired to bring us together and has led us to the point of bringing you this podcast where we get to share some of the things that have significantly shaped our lives and brought us into a more expansive view of reality. Hey, Annelise and Parker, how's it going? How are you?
Hey, Brandy. Good to be here.
Yeah.
Good to be here. We're so excited about this.
Yeah,
Yes.
This is so exciting. It's been a long time coming. Everything leading up to it. Yeah, so I
Many
thought we could.
synchronicities.
Yes, absolutely. So many synchronicities. And I can't wait until we get into some of the future episodes where we're going to be talking more about those synchronicities and everything that kind of conspired to bring us together to bring this podcast to life. So it's also fascinating.
Yes, definitely.
Annelise, yeah, you've had a really fascinating journey that I'm sure our listeners will appreciate as we get into that more moving forward. So yeah, and that TikTok that you have going on, that is really reaching a lot of people. That you're sharing your journey with so many people, and so
thank you.
Yeah,
That was not an expected part of my life.
Yeah.
I wasn't originally. I was just sharing music on that app. I'm a singer-songwriter. That's kind of that's kind of the identity I had all of my life until this spiritual awakening happened.
Yeah.
And then realized there's a lot more I've got going on that I need to talk about. And so I shifted on there from sharing music to sharing my story. And surprisingly, it drew in a lot of people with similar stories, and it's created this really fun community of people who are supporting one another, you know, kind of in a realm that's not really fully accepted yet by all of the public. At least the more religious public. So
yeah,
it's been a really fun journey so far.
Yeah, for sure. Because this, like you were saying, there's not really a place for this kind of thing in the world. And so a lot of people feel kind of stuck in between, you know, like they're in the hallway. They're not really sure which door. It's like they're coming out of maybe Christianity and they're looking for something more. But it's kind of hard to navigate that liminal space because there aren't really that many options. So
Exactly.
it's really cool that you are a light for those people. And by you sharing your journey, I mean, it really resonates with so many other people. And so,
Well,
that's this.
Thank you. And I'd like to tell our listeners now that on my journey, I found you, Brandy, and your book and your content. And that was a big light in my life.
Aw.
And it's just a dream come true to be friends and to be doing this together with Parker, who is my husband. And it's a dream come true to be doing this. Really it is.
Yeah, it's just amazing how we met. That's another thing. I guess we should tell our listeners how we did meet. It was Instagram. I was just sharing away my my contemplative post as I'm processing my own deconstruction journey, my own spiritual awakening. And Annelise, on a similar journey, just we found each other and we were following each other and we had chatted a little bit, just in the DMs about spiritual stuff.
Yeah.
Nothing much, and nothing really on a personal level at all. And then out of the blue, she mentioned, hey, if you're ever in the Nashville area. just, hit me up. We'll have a coffee. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's not too far from me. Yeah. If you're ever in the Auburn area. And she's like, oh my God, shut up. I'm from Auburn. And
yeah,
so,
we're from Auburn.
yeah.
Me too.
And found out we went to the same high school, same school. Just had so many connections. It was destiny for sure that we find each other.
Yeah. So anyway, the rest is history. Now we are fast friends. It's been really fun. But yeah, I guess I could share a little bit about my journey to give listeners a feel for where I'm coming from. So
your journey is beyond fascinating. So buckle up, everybody.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So in 2014, I had a spiritual awakening that just really propelled me on a journey of seeking out ultimate truth. I had been experiencing a season of depression. And I know now that it was not clinical depression. It was definitely philosophical depression, existential angst. But in the moment, as it was happening to me, I had never been given to clinical depression issues. So as it was happening, I thought, well, this will relent. In time, it will lift. Whatever this is, it's seasonal. And but it didn't. And it just really pressed in on me and got heavier and heavier. And so finally, one morning I woke up under just a cloud of palpable heaviness. And it was just really, really intense. And I remember thinking, I can't take this anymore. So in that moment, I just cried out to God. And it wasn't a pious prayer by any stretch of the imagination. It was a provocative prayer. It was a more of if you are there kind of prayer. And I just started unleashing all of my frustrations and just all of it was wrong in my life or perceived wrong, everything that just had me underneath it. And I'm just ranting and just unleashing all these frustrations. And in the midst of all of that chaos, just this swirl of emotion, I heard a voice as loud and clear as anything I have ever heard in my life. And that voice just said, be still. And it was an inner voice, to be sure, not an external voice. But in that moment, that voice just stilled me from the inside out. So just total peace just washed over me in that moment. And I remember thinking, I know this is God, but I didn't have a context for what had happened to me. I didn't understand. I had this experience, but I didn't have anything to hang it on, if that makes sense. So I began to plug into some churches to try to make sense of what had happened to me. Really, I just wanted a framework, theological beliefs, to understand, I guess, to conceptualize this experience that I had. And so I was from a Christian family, so I plugged into some Christian churches, and I just began reading the Bible and reading books, just read volumes, studying, and ultimately I found mainstream Christian answers to life's most important questions just less than satisfying. And I came to the end of all of that and landed in a more contemplative space. So it was contemplative Christianity, shifted into an Episcopal church, began reading Thomas Merton. And in that space, it's just a more mystical way of being. And it's more, that peace that I had experienced at my awakening, I was tapping back into that. And so I began to realize that Jungian psychology, shadow work, that kind of thing is really the only path forward. And by forward, I mean back into that peace. And really what it is, it's authenticity. It's coming into alignment. It's inner alignment. And the only way that we are able to consistently tap into that peace that I had experienced in my awakening is to learn to be present in the moment. See, my awakening experience pulled me out of my thoughts and into the present moment. And that is why I experienced such massive peace. I didn't know that at the time, but I see it now. And so I realized that in order to live in that peace and have that, cultivate that inner peace, I needed to do my shadow work. And so I really plugged into the Jungian approach to, integration, and individuation. And as I read volumes like Jungian psychology, I read Jung himself, but also Jungian analysts, and all of that was so helpful in my own journey. And I began seeing a spiritual director. So because of my interest in Jungian psychology and spiritual direction, in the course of my life was taking in that moment, I went to school to become a spiritual director. So I got my certification in spiritual direction during that time. And then from there, I did a Jungian coaching program. It was like a 2-year certification program, and all of that stuff, primarily I was doing it for my own benefit so that I could apply the principles to my own life and that I could become free and liberated and live in that place of peace. But it also allows me to hold space for others who are also on that journey. And so I am a spiritual director and a Jungian coach. And so, while I was in that space and I'm doing my inner work and I'm finding a lot of peace and refreshment, and I'm thinking, that spiritual awakening was pretty abrupt, but I'm coasting along now. I've got it all figured out. And then lo and behold, my grandmother, who was 95 at the time, came to the end of her physical life. And after she crossed, she found a way to push her way back into space and time in a way that she was able to have sustained communication with us. And so that really rocked my world. It was totally unexpected. Coming from a Christian background, that's not something I had ever dabbled in or tried to cultivate or tapped into. So it came as quite a shock. But it ended up being a tremendous gift because it connected a lot of theological dots, just brought things into sharper focus for me. Like some of the theological things that I had wrestled with, like the atonement or the concept of hell, like eternal conscious torment versus annihilationism versus universal reconciliation, all of those things that I had kind of swirling in the ether that I had wrestled with. I had already landed in a place where I felt like universal reconciliation was the most likely outcome. I was a hopeful universalist. But my grandmother, when she came through, and I should say she stayed and she communicated because of her love and devotion for family members. And these nerdy theological, philosophical questions, they were not the reason that she stayed. But thankfully, she was generous in answering some of these questions for me. And so it just really helped to just validate a lot of the things that I was already intuiting and believing and kind of pressing into. And she did tell me some things that were not on my radar, really, like reincarnation is true, those kinds of, and I was like, what? Yeah. So it, in the course of time, as I communicated with her, I had, I deepened, I guess in my spiritual seeking or whatever, just greater depths. It was like I was venturing further and further away from the purview of mainstream thought. And I continue to, but it's been such a gift, even though it does strip you down where you can feel alienated, isolated, unsure of what's going on, as it's happening. But ultimately, every time it makes me a better person. I'm able to let go more and more of those ego constructs and to see reality as it really is. So it's been a tremendous gift. And I share that in my book, which is Through the Veil, A Glimpse into the Afterlife. And I just, I give the account of what happened, how she came through, and our communications. And I also share some existential things, about heaven and hell and where this whole thing is going, the meaning of life. And so that's my journey. And I continue to communicate with my grandmother. There will be a lot of things that I share that will be things that I have had conversations with her through the veil, where her insight has really helped to tie up some loose ends, bring things into sharper focus. And so that's kind of my vantage point. And so, so that's who I am and that's where I'm coming from.
That's amazing, Brandy.
It really amazing. Yeah. I think your book does such a great job in helping bridge the gap between biblical context of Christianity and this spiritual awakening journey that reveals more than we typically find in the Bible. For me, it helped a lot. It helped me to bridge that gap when I was trying to figure out how to blend my religious upbringing with the undeniable experience of what had happened to me spiritually.
Well, thank you. Yeah. See, when I wrote the book, I was thinking, that's what I was trying to do, really, is to kind of bridge the gap. And that's why there are a lot of references to scripture. I really, because that is the lens that I was coming from. I had to make sense of things through that lens myself. And so that's how I sort of processed everything. And so that, it was my hope that it would help others who were coming from a Christian background, who had maybe just, they were at that point where they're beginning to deconstruct or, like on the threshold of a deconstruction, to kind of help people to see that it's a more expansive way of viewing reality, and it need not be so frightening and unmooring like it often is for people.
Yeah. Getting stuck in the same routine as everybody else and, just thinking that's life.
Yeah.
I would recommend to anyone listening to this, go get Brandy's book, Through the Veil, because
Oh, yeah.
the summary is good, but you need the book and to hear her full story and to hear how her grandmother was able to do this and how it's not some spooky story that someone at church warned you about. It is far more profound and
it's all love and light. It's not anything
understandable
darkness or anything like that.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And and that does need to be said, because people often think of, communication with spirits or paranormal activity as something dark, and in the church, it's often just, oh, well, that's demonic. Yep. They dismiss everything right out of hand as demonic. And, my grandmother, and I have interviews out there. I've spoken on this publicly. So my story's out there and all the details are out there for anyone who's interested. But my grandmother came through because of her love and devotion for family members. She literally saved some lives. She could see destructive patterns in people's lives that needed to be spoken into. She could see how people were struggling with mental health issues. And so she interjected herself in a way that brought healing and helped these people. Nothing about it was ever... it was frightening initially because my family was not expecting the communication, and so they were horrified. But once they realized that, it was Granny, or they were entertaining the possibility that it might be Granny, it was not frightening anymore. It's definitely wrapped in love, all of the communications.
And it's so clear just from what she says and what you have shared that she says.
And, from what you've shared with us and experiences and everything, Granny has proven to you over and over again that it is Granny. It's not whatever else that people would want to think,
Right. We've been communicating for 3 years now. So, if it's there are a lot of Christians who say, oh, it's just demons posing, because they pretend to be angels of light or whatever. And I'm like, well, if this is a demon, it's really playing the long game. We're talking 3 years here. Yeah. And all that demon has done is tell me that it loves me, it gives me, like comfort and peace on days. Help. Yeah. Trying to help me. And, there was a day when I was extremely sad, and it was the anniversary of my dog Luke's crossing. And so I was just having a really sad day, and I hadn't told anyone that I was, having a sad day. I was at home alone doing my own thing, and out of the blue, the phone rang, and it was my aunt who lives where my grandmother's portal is, where my grandmother communicates. And I'm like, yeah, what's going on? And she said, Granny just came on the TV, told me to call you. I'm like, yeah, what's Granny need? And she said, Granny says, and she's reading the words, on the television as my grandmother is communicating. And Granny says that Luke is sending his love and she loves you and that he's with you. And she could see that I was struggling that day. She knew what I was feeling. And so it was just really sweet. And so I'm not the work of demons, at all.
Exactly.
And I think too, and we'll get into this on this podcast, but talking about the astral realm and astral projection and astral travel, I think will help people understand more where this is all coming from and put it in more of a scientific, understandable way than just some woo thing that you dismiss because you've never been told it's real.
Yeah.
I think science is catching up with what's happening to people now, which is very needed. Parker, tell us about your background and what brought you here.
Okay, so my name is Parker Bess. I didn't necessarily grow up the way that Brandy and Annelise did. I grew up with my mom. My dad was in the picture too all the time, but my mom is who I would always talk about spiritual stuff with or religious stuff or whatever. And it was just different because my dad was more religious and my mom is more spiritual, like 100%. So I grew up different. I grew up with spirituality, people like, I guess, paranormal-ish, not communicating with the paranormal, but knowing that they're there, we just can't see them. And um, so, yeah, so I grew up in a spiritual household, me, my sister, and my mom. And just, I don't know, just one thing led to another of just kind of developing this knowledge of spirituality. And then me and Annelise met, and Annelise was more religious at the time, and
I drug him to church, is what he's trying to say. I dragged him to church every
right.
Sunday after we met, and
Okay.
he had adjustment issues.
Yeah, so that is right. I was trying to sugarcoat. Probably shouldn't, but yeah. So me and Annalise started going to church all the time. I always had some kind of feeling about it. Like every Sunday, I just couldn't find the joy, I guess, in my heart, because I always felt like it was always something more than what is taught in the church. And with all the spirituality stuff that me and my mom have talked about, and her mom was very spiritual, so it was just kind of passed down in that way. It was hard for me to conform to, and so needless to say, one thing led to another, and my interest in things took off with Ancient Aliens. I watched that from the time I was 16 years old till the season ended, pretty much. So everything ended with that. And I just found that so interesting because it just made so much sense. It was there's no religion, there's no power grab. It's just, these are the artifacts that are there, and they're still standing there today. And,
How
it
did
was
they
just
get
so,
there?
yeah, exactly. How would these get there thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago, when at the same time mainstream archaeology or mainstream science wants to say people with chicken bones and chicken bones and like mallets are building pyramids, it's I mean, it just doesn't even make sense. So
Yeah.
I was very interested in that. That's where the religion and that kind of crossed for me, because being a part of the spirituality realm, I knew that I'd never pictured God as as a being, I should say. So it was very different for me and Annalise to kind of make that kind of mesh for a while. And so yeah, so that's where I come from with the whole spirituality, religious background. I haven't had to deconstruct nearly as much, I guess. And
Yeah.
that's a blessing, I would say. Just being a part of Annalise's deconstruction, it was
It's painful to watch, isn't it?
yeah, it was. I mean, seriously.
What
And just
what got you from? Tell people what got you from more like your alien knowledge to more of the esoteric knowledge of like secret societies, and you just know so much about this and have so much to
yeah.
share.
Yeah, so I met a couple of guys, and they wanted me to be a part of their new group, which was the Masons. They just joined the Masons, and it was all fun. It was all cool. We were the only pretty much young guys in the town. So we had what is like just a powwow, like a guy powwow. Yeah, let's do that. That sounds great. Well, needless to say, once I joined the Masons and figured out a lot of their secret handshakes and all kinds of things like that I could match to other people's knowledge of Masonry, where I knew if they were telling the truth or not, to be honest. And one thing led to another with that, and deeper down the rabbit hole you go, you just start to learn and uncover tons of dark occult knowledge that is riddled throughout our society. And it's
And religion
people
too.
and religion. People do not want to admit this stuff. They don't want to even acknowledge it. They want to live in their bubble of just got to go to work tomorrow and make dinner and go to bed. Yeah, pay bills and go to bed and
Do Do it again.
Pay my mortgage. That's it, you know. And a lot of people aren't really afforded the opportunity, I guess, to sit down and study or to sit down and deconstruct, because it's all just a part of your life. You know, it's all a routine. Everybody's on a routine pretty much. And, you know, and for myself, like, I was actually able to sit down and learn a lot of this stuff for 6 years. I was able to put a majority of my day into a lot of this stuff. I'm not going to really get into why I was able to do that, but I was, and it was the best. It was the best thing that really could have ever happened. Cause I mean, I went to my own university per se, where I was able to just uncover tons of knowledge and all kinds of things. You know, I mean, that's my background. That's my background. I want to say what Annelise was saying before I introduced myself was that science is starting to prove spirituality, starting to prove all the things that we're going to get into. It's all coming full circle because of the quantum science, the quantum physics that is just now being discovered. And it's just truly amazing. And it's really going to shock people really bad. Like, it's going to blow people's mind when they really figure out what this life is, you know?
What's really going on.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what we want to talk about here.
Yeah. Yeah. Ultimate reality. And, you know, people, you know, talk about science or whatever, like, you know, people being more science minded versus spiritually inclined or whatever, like there's a divide, or like you could really separate the two. But really, you know, I believe in science. I just believe science hasn't figured everything out yet. You know, and that's the nature of science, that, you know, there are hypotheses, and, you know, you're testing continually and perpetually and digging for deeper and deeper truths. And, you know, I mean, really that cannot be separated out from our metaphysical, you know, reality, the metaphysical side of things. So,
right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So Annelise, if you want to go ahead and, just tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're coming from and who you are.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so I'm Annelise, and I used to say my identity would have been I'm a singer-songwriter. That was my life's pursuit. I grew up in evangelical Christianity, Southern Baptist primarily, and it was my entire life, not just in a religious sense, but it meant everything to me. It was the cornerstone, you know, of who I was. So we're talking church every Sunday, every Wednesday, every church camp, every VBS, the whole thing. And I loved it. I never questioned it. I was very happy in it, but I was also extremely anxious and depressed. So happy, but anxious and depressed, because I was not, I didn't know it at the time, but I was not being authentic to who God really was and who I really was. Who I really am. So that's my religious background. After Parker and I got married, which a little bit about us, we met in high school in Auburn, Alabama, which Brandy is also from the Auburn area.
Synchronicity.
We didn't find that out till later. He and I, we moved to New Jersey. We moved back south. We did a lot of moves, and all along our marriage, we were in church. I was leading worship. I was working in children's ministry. I was leading girls' Bible studies, and full-heartedly. This was not some facade. I thought this is the right thing. I love it. I love God. I don't really understand this whole like Old Testament God thing, but who cares? They tell me it's not for me to understand. So I pushed on and what have you. After we had our first son, though, I entered into a really difficult chronic pain journey that was made much worse with the birth of our second son. Two C-sections, 2 different autoimmune flare-ups, but manifest as just chronic pain to an extreme degree that really shook up my life and removed from me the labels that had kept me just kind of held me up my whole life. I wasn't able to do singing and songwriting anymore because I couldn't really walk very far. I couldn't leave the house very often. I wasn't able to really mother actively for those about the first year. I was real limited. And I was really depressed about it, and cried out to God and said, heal me and I'll do anything. And the healing didn't come. And so I just kept suffering and suffering. And I got to a really dark place where I was ready to just kind of check out of here. And my mom introduced me to a natural medicine healer that she had met who thought he could help me, because up to this point, none of the Western medicine modalities were helping. And I had several spinal procedures and all kinds of pills and pain pills and nerve numbings and all you can think of, physical therapy. Nothing was working. And he said, I know what'll work. He said, you need a psilocybin mushroom experience, and it'll show you why you're basically why you're manifesting chronic pain after a childbirth like that, because it shouldn't be going on like this. Like, something is wrong. And I would not have been open to it had I not been at the very end of my rope. The very, very end, because this Annelise, this version, was everything I just described. I mean, very devoted church girl who didn't even know about mushrooms, didn't even know about it. But it was really down to a life or death kind of thing for my quality of life. And I did it, and it cracked my world wide open. And I've shared about this some on Brandy's other podcast, Spectral Symposium. Did I say that right?
You did, yes.
Okay, good. I love it. And so I won't get into, exactly what was experienced in that moment, but all in all, I met with the presence of God, true God, not the God I had been told was God, not this Old Testament, justice and blood sacrifice and all those. He was not there. I met with Source God, and it was revealed to me who I really am beneath this character of Annelise, and the oneness of all that is. And what was also revealed to me was kind of my doing in my pain, how I had held on to false beliefs, how I had been inauthentic to myself, how I had put so much pressure on myself to play this character to a point where I totally missed the boat. And I thought I'd done it right because I was in church, I was religious, I was a Christian. But after that mushroom experience where I met with the presence of God, I realized, no, I'm pretty off base. Like, I got it right by the book, but not by reality. It's not what it was painted to be. From there, my oldest son, started asking me a lot of questions about religion and atonement, and I couldn't answer them. And I was also really confused because I was also trying to figure out how this God I had met with matched with this religious version of God, still going to church at the time. And I had to start deconstructing my religion. Why do I believe this? So that I can tell him why he should believe this. And it crumbled real quickly once I started actually digging into things. And I was upset because at the time I was almost 30 and thought I had it all figured out and thought I'd done the right thing, just to find out I've been deceived with the rest of the world. And quickly realized I have to tell everybody about this. I can't let people I love continue in we're all convinced this is right because the church says it. But when you go looking into, well, what formed these traditions and beliefs, and who put these scriptures together in the way they're together, and, really start digging, it falls apart. And it's really upsetting if you were like me and devoted your whole life, because now your whole identity is falling apart. And so the next couple years after that, I had to kind of piece together what I really believed. I spent the next couple of years reconstructing after everything had crumbled, and not by my choice, really. I told God, heal me, I'll do anything, not realizing, well, in order to heal you, you have to completely die to yourself, what you thought reality was, who you thought I was, God, who you thought God was, everything, and start from scratch and let me show you the truth, because it's not what man has painted it. And on this journey, I got the undeniable message within my heart that said, you have to start sharing this on TikTok. And I said, no, I don't think so, because that is gonna ruin my life. My life is surrounded by evangelical Christianity and Christian people. It just wouldn't fly. And at the time, I was still in church, working in the church and everything. But I did it anyway. And it's been a wild ride, but it's brought so many amazing people into my life, like you, Brandy, who are on similar journeys. And I'm so thankful I listened to that voice and started sharing this and put myself out there. And it created a really cool space on TikTok for people on similar journeys who have nobody in their life talking about this stuff or even saying they're going through it. And so it's kind of just blasted off from there and turned into just this beautiful ministry almost, but not in the way that the church told me ministry looks. So that's how I got here.
And, you know, just watching Annelise and all this unfold on TikTok and everything, and personal experiences, personal conversations between people, these people that hear her message, they feel it deep down, like this is truth, or this sounds like truth. Let me go dig and see, because
yes,
it's just the truth. That's just what it is. And when your higher self or something know that, you know, they know that.
Yeah, because I'm not on there telling people anything new that they don't already know. You know, they know it, and their knower, because their knower is the one consciousness that all is. And and I say it, and for some reason it's okay for me to say it because I come from Christianity, so now people are willing to hear it, you know. And they go, oh my gosh, yeah. You know, and same with me, like when you're hearing the truth, because the spirit of truth lives in you. So it's been really cool to help. I don't know. It's just been really cool that my journey of profound struggle, I'm able to turn around and put it out there and help someone else avoid such struggle and maybe crawl out of their own hole in their own way.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Isn't that called the dark night of the soul? That's what it's called, right?
Yeah, it can be. Yeah, like when you awaken and then you go to just such a dark place because of everything that's been thrown at you, and you have to reconcile that with your worldview.
Right. And letting go of all of those constructs, because once you see, you can't unsee. I think it's Salman Rushdie. He has a quote. It's something like, and it's in my book on one of the chapters. Let's see, I'm trying to remember. Is like, once you step through the looking glass, you can't come back through because the glass may cut you to pieces. That's not an exact quote, but that's it exactly. You can't, once you can't unsee and unknow.
Yeah, once you unplug from the matrix, that's it.
It's very hard. I've been fortunate to have Parker as my life partner on this journey because of, as he said, he did not have the same upbringing as me, so he was a bit of unbiased voice in this journey for me, or else I probably would have run back because it was really hard to get out.
But we both, you know, for me too, you know, with you, we're just a good team, because she has that in me, and then in her, you know, her just profound, just light that shines through is just a major testament to me of just God in itself, to be honest. And
that's so sweet.
And
you hit the jackpot, Annelise.
That's it.
But on the other side, like the religious part of everything, where I got to be involved in that and see all of that, it just helped bring everything full circle for both Annelise and myself. We can just see it. Yeah. We can just see it from a bird's eye view, or whatever you want to call it, from a different view than everybody else.
Right. Because like when you zoom in, it's so easy to get lost in the details. You feel like you're having your subjective experience, your spouse is having their subjective experience. You're sort of colliding into one another because that's how it's like a constriction of awareness as we're living our lives. And so it's so easy to get zoomed in to the point that we miss the boat. But yeah, when you zoom out, and you guys have zoomed out, I would say that the psilocybin was a huge zoom out moment. But when you see things through a zoomed out perspective, you can see all of those synchronicities and all of life conspiring to bring you together. And, and the way that you balance each other out, like you were saying, you can see the light flowing through her, and then like all of that esoteric knowledge and the way that you are able to integrate these truths. I don't know. I mean, it flows together beautifully. And there are no accidents. I mean, we are all, people feel like maybe they're losing friendships as they deconstruct or whatever. And that can cause that dark night of the soul, because it can be very alienating and unmooring, especially for highly social people. I feel like I'm a very introverted person. I spend a lot of time in solitude already. So it wasn't that upsetting to be sort of alienated in that space. But for some people, it's just super excruciating. But I would just, encourage people, anyone listening who's on that journey and feels that in their soul, do not despair, because those people aren't losses. They're alignments. The universe will send you the right people when the timing is right. And and the fact that that you guys, Annelise and Parker, both, the way that we met and the way that things came together, we couldn't have planned that or orchestrated. No. I mean, but when you relax into life, when you do what is yours to do, and so like Annelise stepped out and she put that content on TikTok, even though she didn't want to. She's like, oh no, I can't do that. And I laugh all the time. I'm like, God must not want me to have friends, because it's like a perpetual first, I have this spiritual awakening that blows my life apart. Then I have this like deconstruct out of mainstream Christianity. So that's alienating again. And then my grandmother, pops back into time and space. So
that's next level.
Yeah. When you start sharing, when you share that you talk to your dead grandmother, through a television or electronic devices, that kind of gets rid of a few people. So so I'm like,
they're the ones who needed to go, though. They are.
And see, that's the thing. You have to be true to yourself. Authenticity is so important. And so, for a while, I didn't share about my grandmother. I kept that to myself. And I think that's healthy, because you have to sort of let things settle in at a deep level, because you can have cognitive knowledge or head knowledge of something, but not be your lived reality, not your experiential reality. And so, but once it settled in, I was like, it would be remiss of me not to share this. It's such profound information, insights, things that are so healing and helpful. And it's a gift to anyone who's open to hear it. And so for me to keep it to myself because I fear what people might think, that would be a tragedy for myself, because I would be out of alignment with my own self, and also for all the people who are open and it could benefit them too. So
absolutely, it could change the world.
Yeah,
for anyone listening who is a Christ follower, I can tell you, like, this journey has not, at least for me, it has not led me away from following Christ. It's quite the opposite. It's led me so much closer and really helped me understand that verse where he says, to follow me, you have to die to yourself. Yeah. And like you said, you had to say, okay, I'm not going to care what they think of my story. Yeah. I'm going to put this out there. And same for me, I had to say, okay, I'd worked all my life to build this character of Annelise up, and I'm just going to throw her out now because that's what he's telling me to do. And it's undeniable. And it's when I did that my life began to blossom in the most beautiful ways and in such an authentic way. And synchronicity started to happen in my life. Before that, everything was very just, like Parker said, routine. Very, okay, the church, I do my quiet time, I do my this. I didn't have that experience of the living God in my life, who some relate more to with words like universe, source. But I'm very thankful for this journey. It did not do what the church often says deconstruction does. It didn't lead me further. Now it led me away from church, but not away from
led you away from church.
It led me away from things I needed to be led away from.
Yeah.
It led me closer to the one that all is, to the Spirit of Christ. And I don't know. I think it's done the same for y'all, just from the outside looking in. And
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And I think, like for Parker, having not been so indoctrinated, so conditioned in the church or whatever, I think that also allowed for him to have some exponential growth, in that esoteric knowledge. He was able to entertain some ideas outside the box of Christianity, which has been helpful, as in your relationship together, because, you both bring something unique to your journey together. But it can be tough when you're indoctrinated from a kid, especially. And
absolutely.
and Annelise, you were raised from like a baby, right, in church. So
and my dad has the title of minister on his resume, and just, I mean, it's beyond just like a piece of my, like, it was my life. And it is, but not in the way that it was.
Right.
My focus has never left the one we call God, but the dogma that surrounds that has thankfully fallen away, and I've been able to go much deeper than I ever could have if I just kept following the matrix of religion.
And I want to say, like, with deconstructing, or in the way that Annelise or even myself we're talking about things, all this stuff is public knowledge. If anybody is just intrigued by anything, or just from what we're saying, you could literally look this up and it will come up. This isn't guesses. This isn't anything like that. You could look all of this up.
Not my opinion. This is what you go digging for truth. You seek and you find, and that's what's blown my mind. And I've told Parker this. We'll get into, I think, on this podcast some about Old Testament God, Yahweh. And if you just Google that, you can get, it's literally just a Google, and you can get all the answers that will make everything make sense, but you're told not to look. And so that keeps people from looking. And it took an awakening for me to go, okay, I'm going to peek behind the curtain and see where this is all coming from. But we kind of laugh about that from time to time. Gosh, this is on Google. It's not hidden knowledge. But like he said, you have to go looking for it.
Yeah.
It's not going to be preached to you.
That's the thing. Well, it's not hidden in the sense that it is there, but it is hidden in plain sight because people can't see it because they're too focused on other things. And, a lot of people aren't interested at all. I mean, even if that truth nugget is dangled in front of them, they're like, oh, no, they want life as is because they're comfortable. And there are a lot of people who are, whether they're religious or not, but people who are religious, who are stuck in that church system, that routine, like you were saying, Annelise, they're not really free. The Bible says you will know the truth and the truth will set you free. And so if what you know has not set you free, perhaps it's not true.
Exactly.
But when you know the truth, when you have one of those truth bomb moments, it blows you apart in a way where you can see from like that zoomed out angle. And so I think that's what it is, that a lot of people, for people who will be listening to us, will be on that journey. They will be, at least ready to go down the rabbit hole if they are not already, some way into it. But there are a huge majority of people who are stuck in that matrix. They don't want to know the truth, not really, because they want to be comfortable.
Definitely. I was talking to somebody I know really well, and I was telling them about something so profound, like something just blow your mind, right? And the first thing out of their mouth after maybe a 2-second pause was, well, what are y'all going to do today? I was just like...
They can't hear it.
It's like, did you hear what I just...
They can't hear it.
And that's like me, like I make reels and stuff, like TikTok or Insta, whatever, and sometimes I'm like, am I speaking into a void? Is there anyone out there? Is it, can
exactly.
hear me? But yeah, I mean,
Oh, go ahead, Brandy. I'm sorry.
No, I mean, you're right, though. People, they can't hear it, they're just stuck.
I think some people are just so, they like to live in their bubble. They don't want to even entertain the thought of anything outside their bubble. So a lot of people just sit there in their bubble for the rest of their life. And
Yeah, 100%.
The truth is so uncomfortable, and it'll pop your bubble.
It
And then
will.
you don't have a bubble. And then
Yeah.
you've got to figure it out without a bubble, and it's hard, but it's necessary. And I think that's the whole esoteric meaning of the crucifixion. You have to do it too, not just Jesus. Like, you need to do the same thing. And Brandy, I like what you've said before. You pursue truth at all costs.
Yeah.
Even if the truth loses you, your identity, your friends, your family.
Yeah.
Truth at all costs. And that's what this podcast is going to be about, is revealing the truth at all costs, even if it's uncomfortable, even if it sounds crazy.
Yeah.
The truth is crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. I have come to see, the insights that my grandmother has shared and the things that have come to light, and I should say also that she doesn't give me all the answers. There's an element of free will in there where, I have to ask the right questions, and some things are a no-say. So it's not like she's just dispensing all this divine knowledge. But, in my own journey, it's been a process of unfolding and uncovering more and more truth, deeper truth. And it always makes you feel uncomfortable because it's uncomfortable to that ego. Every deeper layer of truth just reveals in some way where I'm lying to myself and others, where I'm stuck in some capacity. So, if you're not wanting to do the inner work, you could really get lost in these rabbit holes of esoteric knowledge in a way that would make you more dualistic, which, more trapped in that conditioned binary way of thinking, that us versus them. And so the whole point of this kind of knowledge, this kind of insight, is really to bring us into alignment. And so that's why the name of our podcast is Transcending the Rabbit Hole, because going down rabbit holes is easy for those who are curious. I mean, information is tantalizing to the intellect, but in order to become a whole person, we have to transcend that intellect. We have to drop out of that thinking conditioned binary mind and learn to just be and allow that information to sink down into us, into a lived reality, and make us, bring us into alignment where authenticity. We keep using that word a lot, but that's really what it is. It's about being authentic.
Yeah. I've learned that too on this journey. I used to hear people say that, like, it really does just come down to, are you living authentically or not? Mm-hmm. And now I see it. I see what that means. And when I wasn't living authentically, although I thought I was because I was doing what the church and the Bible said, I was so sick. Like, and I didn't know it was making me so sick until that awakening.
The kind of sick where there's not a medical diagnosis. It's harbored stress, or just harbored just it essentially was herself. It was her higher self being put into a matrix system that did not align with her at all. And her body just said no.
It said, I'm done. I'm done. And it manifested as pain until I was willing to say, okay, what do you need to tell me? What am I doing wrong? Because like you said, in my story, autoimmune markers, everything was crazy. The doctor said, obviously, like, we see it, your body's attacking itself, but no one knows why. And now I know why. It's because I wasn't living authentically. And who would have thought that would cause disease and pain and chronic illness? But I think that's the root of most disease and pain and chronic illness is living
not true to yourself.
And like you said, in misalignment, not true to yourself. Living without the knowledge of who you actually are underneath your character. And
and it all really reduces down to our perception of separation. Like, once we see that we are one with God and all others, from there, I mean, when I say see, I don't mean conceptually. There are a lot of people who would say that. But it's when you have a lived reality of that, when it becomes experiential. And from there, you begin to see all of the ways that the ego is sabotaging and keeping you from your highest life path, from your true self, your true essence. And it's important also to point out that like Annelise, you're living a good life. You know, when you say you weren't being true to yourself, or you were wearing a mask, or you know, or living in the false self, you know, a lot of people might take that language and kind of think of something negative, or, you know, like out there doing licentious things or whatever. But no, that false self is usually a very polished, very righteous, very good, shiny self. I mean, Eve she wanted the fruit because it looked good and it was appealing, not because it looked bad or evil or sinister. So it's the good that trips us up more often. And that's why I always say that people in these churches are probably further away from actually having a realization of God than people who are like living in the slums, you know, with the bottle of tequila or whatever, you know, because because when you get to the end of yourself, that's where you're able to find it. And if you are in church and you think, I have checked the boxes, I'm going to heaven when I die, I've got this, figured out, I'm doing what I need to do, then you're not open. You're not in a place where God can resonate with you, get through to you.
Exactly.
Yeah, I really think that, Jesus taught on that too. Love the whole, pretty much, what was it, like the rich man, it would be super hard for the rich man to pass through the eye of the camel, or something like that.
The camel through the eye of the needle.
Yeah, exactly. Something like that. But the rich man. Well, the poor man, like you were saying, they're so they're not driven by, their ego is not as prevalent as it would be, the rich man. So they're a heck of a lot more open to hearing God and having an experience compared to, okay, I'm going to do my steps and, say this and say that. And now we're Gucci, so it's just like,
Yeah, for sure.
So I do.
Yeah.
I really think that, exactly. Jesus spoke to all the poor people. He didn't really speak to the kings and all that stuff.
That's right. Yeah, I love it.
What do y'all think we can tell people to expect coming from us on this podcast? Like, why are we doing this? What are we going to get into?
Yeah.
Can I say,
any thoughts?
let me just say something real quick about the synchronicity stuff that we were talking about. So Brandy touched on it. Annelise and Brandy were doing their two separate things on TikTok that has millions and millions of users. Now, Annelise and Brandy have the same niche within TikTok. And then within that niche, they found each other on TikTok. And
Instagram,
or Instagram. And then come to find out, we are all from the same exact town, and they both went to the same high school. Mm-hmm. Now, if that's not the universe or source or God or whatever saying, like, yes, this is right, do this, I don't know what else. I don't know how clear it could be. That is so many things that just can't happen on a wheel spin. That's that's not even 0.1. That's like 0.001% of that happening.
Well, my grandmother tells me often, do not fret, all is guiding all. And so I think, what you're saying, that's true. All is guiding all. If we could just get out of the way and allow life to flow. I know one time I was asking about signs and synchronicities, and, she was saying that there are always signs and synchronicities perpetually flowing for every person. And she said, but most people are lost in thought and they don't see them. So it's about unplugging ourselves from that conditioned mind and being able to come into the present moment where life is happening. And in that life happening, there are synchronicities because there is only one consciousness in that present moment controlling. Well, I say that controlling is a bad word for it.
Leading?
Yeah, just guiding, compelling maybe, or luring us toward a certain trajectory. Yeah, all life is designed to awaken us.
Yeah, exactly.
About a year ago, I told Parker, I'm getting this kind of download, if you will, that we need to start a podcast, and I'm not really sure what. I just know it has to do with all of our late night conversations, because we sit together at night after our kids go down and we just talk about the craziest things that are happening, things that are happening, whether it's to us, through us, in the world. And if I do say so myself, it's a very interesting conversation. But we didn't know where to start with that. We didn't have any direction, and then we got connected with you, and you have so much direction. You just
No, I don't know about that.
You do. You're so good with with words, obviously, and just with putting a project together that needs to be out there, and
Yes.
and it just
Oh my
made
gosh,
so much
yes.
sense. And I think we're going to get to share a lot of very exciting conversations, and I don't want to say teachings, because it's not things people don't know deep within, but remind people what's going on, what we think is coming, and insights from your grandmother and others.
Yeah.
I think people can be really excited for what we've got going on. And I don't know, what can we tell them some of what to expect? I'm just looking at our list of things we know we want to touch on. It'll be things like, what is this global spiritual awakening? The religious matrix. What is Christ consciousness? Dimensions, alternate realities, the multiverse, the paranormal, and even getting into what is this latest alien buzz we're all hearing about, and these UFO light orb sightings. How does that fit into everything? How does it all fit in with who we call God, and much, much more? But that's just a little teaser.
Yeah.
So I think everything's really been touched upon about like what we want to bring to the podcast. It's going to keep going and going, but I guess what I would like to say about the podcast would be, or what I want to tell everybody is, you're a soul. You're not a body. You're a soul having an experience as a human. You're not a human you're not a human that has a soul. You are a light being. You're a soul who is having a human experience. And once you know that, and you can see the life through that lens, this stuff will make complete sense to you.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah, that's a great reminder. And I think we can wrap up this episode. I think we have pretty much covered everything that we wanted to cover. If you're out there listening, if you have any things that you might want to hear about, questions, conversation topics, feel free to send us an email. We'll have our contact information in the show notes. We thank you all for listening, and hope you'll come back and check out the first episode. It will go right down into the rabbit hole. Have we decided on what we want to talk about in our initial first episode?
We mentioned just kind of defining, what is this awakening? What are people awakening to? What is coming to light all across the globe? Happening through us, it's not just us, obviously. It's a massive awakening.
Yes.
And it all ties in with what's going on in the skies. It's happening within us. And
it was spoken about thousands of years ago.
Oh yeah.
In prophecies.
Yeah.
So that's what we might be touching on, right? It's just, what even is this? What are we awakening to? What's to come?
Yeah,
where do we see
I love
this
it.
going?
Yeah, we can define some terms, talk about the matrix, give people an overview of what we're dealing with. And that sounds great. So anyway, thank you all for joining us for this episode of Transcending the Rabbit Hole. Take care. Peace.
Sleep, 'cause distraction is key. But as long as there is still a sun up in the sky, I can choose to live on the sunny side. It's somewhere between burying my head in the sand and falling down the rabbit hole again. I was sleeping just fine peacefully inside my American dream, awoken when those puppet strings were cut right off. It takes a worried man to sing a worried song, and the state of humankind had me humming along. Hello, common sense, I'm convinced we've lost our way, sold our attention to the system. Now there's power to reclaim, but as long as there's a heart beating in my chest, I'll cling to hope that's true. I will cast out the rest.